Hey everyone, before we get into this episode, friend of the podcast, Carl Bonner, is a mixing engineer who helps other producers and mixers find, attract, and build better relationships with clients who are making the kind of music you are most passionate about. He recently began developing a course based on how he trains the Spotify algorithm to make super accurate recommendations for you to find potential artists to work with. And he's giving it all away for free while it's still a work in progress. So go to carlbonner.com/coaching to learn more, and I'll have a link for that in the show notes. So go check it out. Hey everyone, welcome back to Secret Sonics. This is episode 121 with Casey Cavaliere. I had a great chat with Casey about so many things, including his band, The Wonder Years, working with Joe Chiccarelli in the studio, his approach to remote production and collaboration. We also went deep on his approach to producing guitar on records, following the lead of this song itself. We talked about bringing out the emotion of a mix, putting dynamics back into modern productions. And we talked about lessons from his podcast, The Record Process, and we talked about his approach to artist development, helping artists further their reach, and everything in between. So I think you're going to love this conversation. So with all that to say, here's my conversation with Casey Cavaliere here on Secret Sonics. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Casey Cavaliere. Casey is a Philadelphia native musician, producer, mixer, and songwriter, currently residing in Atlanta, Georgia. As a guitarist and founding member of The Wonder Years, Casey has enjoyed an exciting career recording and touring extensively around the world across the last two decades. Throughout his career, Casey continues to nurture a growing appreciation for the process behind the production of high-quality studio recordings. His time spent bringing numerous studio projects to life with The Wonder Years, in addition to many other artists, has only solidified Casey's belief that at the core of every great recording is a great song. Former guest of the show, Carl Bonner, recommended I connect with Casey, who I connected with, and he's graciously agreed to join me on the air. So with all that to say, welcome to Secret Sonics, Casey.
Thanks so much for having me, Ben. And thank you for that introduction. Yeah.
For sure. Well, ripped right off your bio and on the website. So
full disclosure. It was
absolute pleasure.
Oh, good, man. Yeah. No, dude, it's great to come back and do a chat for the show. We've already chatted and connected a little bit beforehand, but so cool to be here. I love the show. Thanks for having me. I'm stoked to dive in.
Yeah, thank you. So tell the audience a little bit about you. You know, I'm just curious about your journey in music. You know, when did music first become the thing for you?
Yeah, from an early age, as they say. I don't know. I mean, I had some musicians in my family. My father was a musician. My grandfather, dabbled in orchestration and composition. He passed when I was pretty young, but, I was left with, a piano at my grandparents' house that, if you ask my parents, they'd love to tell you that even though I had no idea what I was doing, I loved to sit up there and bang on the keys and pretend that I knew what I was doing. And, it kind of just went from there. Junior high into high school, I got really deep into not only playing in concert band and then jazz band with brass. I came into it as a trombone player initially before I picked up guitar later in it.
Great instrument, by the way.
I love it. It was so much fun when I guess the band director comes into probably like elementary school and has like one of every kind of basic instrument, like, a saxophone, a flute, a trumpet, a trombone. I was like, this is the one. Not even unbeknownst to me at that time that I came home, I was like, I think I want to play trombone. And my mom goes, oh, I think your father played trombone, I think when he was a kid too. And I was like, no way. And so I went and dug that old one out. But I did love it. And it gave me a really, really great appreciation for a much wider array of genres, specifically being like classical and composition, the stuff that you kind of get a really cool formative introduction to via high school band, which I was lucky enough to be at a school in a district that had resources like that and had a director that cared, which is not always the case, unfortunately, and also cared very much about jazz composition and gave us a deep, deep, rich history and insight to everything from like Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Ellington, like old swing
Love that
band style stuff. Yeah, man. And
I took a history of jazz course in college. It was amazing.
And I wish I had taken more of those, but I feel lucky that I came out of high school having that kind of appreciation, because you had somebody and saw the way that my band director talked about that kind of stuff. But at the same time, was a kid and was also getting into a lot of punk, alternative music, everything that comes along with the high school angst, of the Philadelphia suburbs. And yeah, I mean, that was kind of it. So by the time, the end of high school rolled around, I had played in a couple bands, had obviously started transitioning to playing guitar, writing songs on guitar. And, that's kind of where Wonder Years entered the picture as more or less just a recreational joke that was only really meant to last an afternoon and provide a couple laughs, with a shared appreciation for that like pop punk genre that was big at the time. And here we are. We've been doing that for 15 plus years, and have a number of full lengths under our belt, and have toured all around the world and spent a lot of time doing it, and learned a lot. And it's been a pleasure. Not always, not 100%. Full disclosure, just like any good relationship, even with just
have you ever seen the bands? Have you ever seen the movie Spinal Tap? Like, every band has.
and this is what I like to say, Ben. Our history and lineage pretty much exactly like that movie, in every sense. So no, I do love that movie though. Also, I'd update it, and I'd like to say that like the new era Spinal Tap for this generation, for like the Gen Z or whatever, is more the Andy Samberg like pop star, which myself and our band have been obsessed with, and that's one of our like favorite like top tour, like put a family movie time on the bus, the one night we're not going out or doing anything, and it's Pop Star. So
nice. I have seen that also.
Yeah.
For me, Spinal Tap will hold the trophy, but I get it, man.
Always. I don't think Pop Star exists without Spinal Tap. But anyway,
fair point.
But yeah. So that was pretty much it. So Wonder Years has been, for the last 15 years, the primary, in many ways, creative output and career for me. And I get the pleasure of doing it with the same 5 other guys for that whole time too, and watching them grow creatively, learn from them, and back and forth. And in the last decade or so, just writing songs, demoing, bringing ideas to the band, and collaborating kind of walked its way into an even deeper appreciation for the production side of things, and following those demos and articulating those ideas to a fuller and fuller, capacity upon bringing them to the band to try and explain something or share, the best representation of a vision. And then eventually, I was like, oh, well, I guess I've learned a little bit doing these records and doing this. And now maybe I can take that even outside of the band, to work with other artists, other bands that have perspectives. It doesn't have to be something, that I or my songwriting was the ultimate catalyst for. There's a lot of people writing incredible songs and music out there. And when I realized that, I was like, man, I want to turn my attention to see how I can help them bring those ideas forth. Because again, like I said, from the high school band director to every producer and creative that we've worked with along the way, that's what helps you grow, what helps you learn what you don't know, and gives you great creative ideas. So I was like, man, maybe I can, slowly start to transition to help some other artists, by sharing some of those things. And it's been awesome. The last couple of years have really flown by, but really developed into a cool side career of producing and songwriting and mixing.
Nice. So this was happening even before the pandemic started. You were already getting involved with helping other artists get their music out in the world and doing the production end of things.
Yeah, so a lot of it started with, I have put together a production suite just outside of Philadelphia in Blackwood, New Jersey, and myself and a couple partners shared that space and have shared that space for over 3 years now, and designed it, fully treated it and tuned the room to be a really, really nice listening environment. And that's where a lot of my gear stayed instead of staying in a storage locker in between tours. So got a lot of use out of that and worked with a lot of local clients, but also, started doing a bit remote mix work or mastering work here and there occasionally. And yeah, so when the pandemic hit, it was kind of, as I think we've talked about a little bit off episode, the transition to, well, now I can't be in the studio, so I can't help in that one-on-one, let's track this, let's get this recorded right now. So where can I still be of service and value, and how can I keep working and keep productive with a lot of those existing clients and or looking outward to new clients. I mean, we're, an entire ocean away right now, and, still collaborating on ideas. And so that was obviously, entering that, realizing, oh, we're going to be here for a minute in this Zoom world. So what can I do with that? What can I take? What have I learned? And that kind of, turned into the last 2 years being a really interesting approach, and me finding my way with remote production, helping bands, artists through song arrangement, development, understanding core story ideas, and then even kind of getting into one-on-one like artist development coaching, helping bands better understand their own identity and what their own sense of authenticity as an artist really means, not just like a buzzword on some like marketing PDF, but what it actually means to them and how that relates to the music they're making. So it's been fun. It's not how I would have drawn it up 10 years ago to take course, but here we are.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like goals, change as you learn things and as life develops, right? Like you can't, if you're trying to, I heard recently on another podcast, it was like a productivity podcast or something, like if you're trying to like go for a goal that isn't going to fit in that moment, like it's like trying to put on a pair of pants that aren't going to fit you unless you like lose weight or gain weight. You know what I mean? Like you can't. So it's you gotta adjust as the time goes on, I guess.
I think that's that's such a great point. The pivoting, right? And I talk about this a lot, and knowing when to, even as a creative too, knowing when and that it's okay to abandon an idea. You don't have to stick with it for the sake of executing. And or a lot of people are like, well, if this doesn't work, the whole thing's shot. It's the whole thing's a failure. It's like, well, but what is it like the There's a saying that's something to the degree of like, I tried like 100 different ways to be successful. It's like you didn't, you just found 100 different ways not to execute that, but in doing so, you got closer and closer to, maybe what you were kind of destined for, or what's actually going to make you unique, whether it's as a songwriter or as a business model, and I think that's a beautiful point that you made there. And a huge lesson that I think is often not always easy to learn and internalize as creatives, for sure.
Yeah. And another quote from that podcast, now that you said that, it's making me think of this as well, is, in that same podcast, they were saying, there's no such thing as failure, just gaining data. So,
dude, exactly. What now? Yeah. What now? You got to tell me what podcast. You got to shout out the podcast. What is it? This
is like the nerdiest podcast I'm ever going to shout out.
I'm sure I'll love it.
It's just like a random productivity podcast I randomly listen to. It's the Working With podcast with Carl Pauline. Check it out.
Okay, Working With. I'll make a note of it.
Yeah, it's like 15 minutes, when you're making a cup of coffee or something.
Yeah.
Gives you something to think about every once in a while.
Yes, I love that. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to. I want to touch a little bit about remote production work, but before we do that, I want to go a little bit further back to the Wonder Years again. I saw that you worked with Joe Chiccarelli on your last full length.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because he's like one of the masters, and are there any lessons that you maybe learned from him specifically?
Oh man,
you find yourself applying these days?
It's funny. We were just and humbly, and you got to be able to laugh about it to like truly internalize it. First of all, Joe, such a great guy, incredible human, and yes, just truly a wildly large figure in the recording and music world. For anybody that doesn't know, if you look up his discography, he's responsible for stuff that is just like had beyond cultural impacts, and even just him telling stories about him being like a 22-year-old super green like intern at a studio and getting a call from the owner and being like, can you cover a session tomorrow? My flight got canceled back from the UK. And he's like, I think I can. Who is it? It's Frank Zappa. Oh no. And then Zappa being like, you know what? It just sounds, it's boring. It sounds too like nice, too perfect. Can you fuck it up a little? And learning those kind of lessons that early from a guy like Zappa all the way through to his work with, he's worked with Jack White on, a song that probably people that don't even know Jack White or his career have heard in like sports arenas around the world. As simple as like, doo, 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 doo.